Hi everyone, welcome to my third video of my Galactic Civilizations 3 guide series. My name is Macsen. During the course of this video, I'm going to be discussing the recent major change to the game that has happened in the 1.4 patch. That is the change to how the allocation of production within the game works. You can see here if I click on the Govern Planet screen, there's no longer a planetary wheel here anymore. You can't actually change the production of a planet in that method anymore. You actually change the production on a planet via two different ways. The first being the global planetary wheel. This is something that many players didn't actually use at all, myself included. I would previously just use the planet wheel on each and every planet. And also Stardock have added these new focuses. They're actually a throwback to Galactic Civilizations 2. They had a similar system there. So what they do is divert 25% of the overall production that you choose via the global wheel into a certain area, that those being manufacturing, research or wealth. So this change is going to have a large impact on how you play the game perhaps. So I'm going to be discussing the implications of these changes and the possible best strategies that you may want to employ while playing the game. I'll also discuss during this video why I believe Stardock has made these changes and what my overall thoughts are on the changes and the removal of the individual planetary wheel. So I imagine you're wondering what effect the removal of the individual planet wheels has had on the game. So I'll start out by mentioning certain concepts that are basically exactly the same, that haven't changed. Those are, you want to focus your production as much as possible. That's going to be much harder without the individual planet wheels. But you're going to have to use the govern screen basically to focus your production. I'd recommend you use 100% in the area that you want to focus on in most circumstances actually, so change them between manufacturing, research and wealth. Mainly you're going to be wanting to use manufacturing and research, but to a lesser extent research. And if you do have money problems, then occasionally you might want to focus on wealth. But you really want to focus your production still. That hasn't changed. You also want to specialize your planets. This is still extremely important. If you're focusing your production, the best way to get production out of them is still by specializing, and the rules for which planets you should specialize are exactly the same. So if you have a planet that's suited for research, you probably want to make it a research world. So for example, that's a research world there. Location's important, of course, when you're specializing, deciding which planets to specialize. If you have a clump of planets all near to each other, they're often very good to have as manufacturing worlds, so they can all distribute their production to a shipyard without any production loss. So that concept is still exactly the same. Also, the concept of treating the game like it's a race is still the same, pretty much the same with all 4X games. The quicker you get things done, the better you'll do. And that's exactly the same still with these production allocation changes. So I broadly categorize Galactic Civilizations 3 gameplay into certain phases. The first phase is the colonization phase of the game, and that's basically when you're creating as many colony ships as possible, spamming them as much as possible to grab as many planets as possible. The second phase is the resource grab, so you're basically creating constructors to grab certain resources within the game and create star bases. And there's the infrastructure phase of the game, which kind of overlaps those two phases, and in fact those phases kind of overlap each other as well. So that's a very important phase of the game. And the phase after that is kind of the main part of the game, where you're researching much more and also conquering opponents, building up fleets. That's kind of the final phase of the game, and deciding what victory type you're going to go after. So in actual fact, many of those phases are pretty much stayed the same in terms of these removal of planet wheel changes. You basically do very similar to what you do before. Now I'm going to hope that you've checked out my first guide video in this series, which is the colonization spam video. So basically that's pretty much identical. You do exactly what you do in that, except for, of course, you can't enter individual planets to change a planet wheel anymore. You have to use the global wheel. So you'd start out by researching exactly the same as you would before. You want to get certain key technologies. The first three along this line are very important to increase the speed of your colony ships and all of your ships in general actually, and also to give you extra range for your ships with the environmental support. That hasn't changed. Moving your ships in the locations where you believe the most world to be is exactly the same, so you want to do that. You want to buy probably colony ships if you have well, a certain amount of colony ships. You have to be a bit more careful with your money these days than you used to. With recent changes in recent patches, colonies actually cost maintenance, so you do need to be a bit more careful. But in this situation, I would buy a colony ship to colonize that planet here, and probably one to colonize that planet as well. You may not have enough money anymore to make survey or sensor ships, which is a pretty good idea, which have really amazing sight. You may just want to make a scout ship, which is a lot cheaper instead, after you've got the extra environmental support and extra engines perhaps. So yeah, the early phase of the game is very, very similar. The only real difference is that you use the global wheel, and that's about it. When you actually start to colonize planets, things do change a tiny bit to what they were before, but still not anywhere near as much as you might think. So basically, one technology which I thought was going to be incredibly important is a new addition to the game. If I dip into the engineering part of the tech tree, you've now got military subsidies. Now what these allow you to do is basically transfer your social manufacturing to a shipyard. Now I thought that you might have to research this very early on, or it might cause problems. You certainly do not want to be splitting this up in any way, shape or form. You either want it on 100% on one side or 100% on another side. You want to maximize your production in all circumstances to get things done as quickly as possible. So I thought that that might be a very important technology, but what I've realized is if you actually stick your production on 100% military, then all of your production will go to shipyards, but only if you have assigned a planet to a shipyard, which of course you do by editing sponsors. So you can see here that Bishop and Calypso are not assigned to a shipyard. So that means that the actual manufacturing still goes to the social side of the manufacturing rather than a shipyard, because there's no shipyard assigned to this planet. So you can see here that the basic factory is actually getting built in 4 turns. So yeah, it turns out that that military subsidies tech isn't as important as I thought it might be. So that's an important trick that you may want to use. Now in certain circumstances you will have to perhaps pick up that tech at some point within a game. In fact, you definitely are going to want to pick it up at some point, because this part of the tech tree is incredibly important. But yeah, that's not necessary in all circumstances early on. This is much later on into my dredging game. We're now on turn 53. So up until this point, I've basically been focusing my production in 100% manufacturing, mainly, apart from getting a certain few key technologies. So in this circumstance, I actually picked up military subsidies. So my key military producing worlds are using those here, the 3 around the homeworld, including the homeworld as well. So I've been mainly spamming out colony ships. I've now moved on to freighters and constructors as well, and I've also made the odd censorship along the way. As you can see, that I've done a very good job in colonizing. In fact, I've got 11 planets, and there are 4 other AIs within the game: the Altarians, the Iridium Corporation, the Thalens, and also the Kryn, and they haven't done a very good job at all. In fact, I believe the most that any of the other AIs has is 5 planets. The Kryn, they start out with 3 in their homeworld, and the Iridiums have 5 up there. So if you out-colonize the AI to this degree, then it doesn't really matter how good startup makes the AI in other areas. It's just not going to do very well against you. The AI probably needs a bit more help with colonizing, at least against players like myself. This is godlike difficulty, of course. I wouldn't play it on anything less. If the AI was better at colonizing, then maybe it would have picked up that planet or that planet as well, and probably that planet also. So this would have been a much more even circumstance between me and the other AIs, but that isn't the case. So I should go on to win this game quite easily, I believe. So as I mentioned, this is kind of the end of the colonization phase of the game. There's a few worlds up here, a few systems where there might be some colonizable planets, but probably not likely. So I've been moving on to making constructors, getting certain key resources. The infrastructure part of the phase of the game kind of overlaps everything really, so that's what I'm focusing on many of these planets currently. Because of the removal of the individual planet wheels, you find in many circumstances that you won't be able to focus your production as much as you'd like to. So say for example a world that you're specializing in research, you would want to focus your research 100% once all of the infrastructure was built up here, but that's not always going to be possible because you have to use the global wheel. This is where the focuses come in. You can basically focus a certain percentage, 25% in fact, into certain areas. So say for example your global wheel happened to be on 100% focus in an area where your specialized world wasn't focusing in this case manufacturing, and with a research world you can use the focuses to divert a certain percentage into that area. Now this isn't great to be honest. In fact you're going to be losing 75% of your production in one way into an area where you don't really want it. So if I had completed this world, all the infrastructure is up, then this would arguably be wasted. What you'd have to do nowadays is basically create a shipyard, and maybe you could use the shipyard to create constructors for example, so the production wasn't completely wasted. You'd be getting something out of it. But in reality you would much rather be wanting to focus your production 100% towards research, but that's not always going to be possible. For most of the game you're going to be wanting to focus on manufacturing, even in the late game, so to build up your ships, your fleets for example. So yeah, there's a lot of wasted production in the game now with this new change to the production distribution method, so to speak. A lot of people are going to be unhappy about this, but overall I would say I am in favour of removing the individual planet wheels just because it caused so much micromanagement within the game. I know not everyone is going to be of that opinion. People who played on tiny or small maps and didn't have very large empires, 10 planets or less, to be honest the old system was probably better in my opinion. But when you're playing with lots of planets, when you've got a big empire of 10 planets or more, and remember that some of the largest maps you can have up to like 200 odd planets, this system is going to be much better. It's going to be much easier to use. You don't have to go into each and every planet to fiddle with the individual planet wheels. What I would say though is that Stardock hasn't done a great job with actually implementing these changes. They could have done a lot more to reduce micromanagement than they have with the focuses. Basically, you still have to enter each and every individual planet to change the focus. There's no other way of doing it. What Stardock should have done is add focus buttons perhaps on this queue here. They also could have done it by adding them here on the colonies list somehow. And also they probably should have a global way of changing all of your focuses at once. So perhaps in the economy screen, or maybe even by creating another tab here. So what I'd like them to do is actually allow you to designate certain planets as a certain specialty, say research, wealth, manufacturing, so you can change your focuses very quickly for those focused worlds. There's got to be an easy way to do that. So this system currently just hasn't been implemented as well as it could have been, and I completely understand why a lot of people are unhappy with the removal of the planetary wheel currently. Diplomacy is something I should definitely mention during the course of this video. Basically, diplomacy hasn't been adjusted since the initial release of the game, not significantly anyway. It's very, very easy to exploit DI currently with the bartering system that exists within the game. You can sell technologies and resources for huge amounts of money or other technologies, and you can go around each and every AI within the game doing this over and over again and getting huge amounts of technology and money out of them. Now because of that, it means that you don't actually have to focus your production on research or wealth as much as you think you'd be having to. In the early game I'd be focusing my manufacturing, or production I should say, almost entirely on manufacturing. There will be at some point where you have to focus your research, and if you're going to focus your research, do it at 100%. You want to get things done as quickly as possible. There are going to be certain technologies that the AIs just don't have for you to trade. If you don't have trading on or tech brokering on, you will have to obviously research more. If you're going for certain victory conditions like the technology victory, you'll have to research obviously a lot more. If you are researching, then you should be using your focuses on certain worlds that don't specialize in research. So say for example this planet here, you'd be using the manufacturing focus, getting up extra infrastructure or making ships that you need. So the situation with diplomacy makes the game a heck of a lot easier. That's what I'm basically trying to say in this part of the video. So that pretty much concludes this video. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I actually rushed in getting this video out and recording on Halloween. There's been such a fury on the startup forums about the removal of the planetary wheel. A lot of people don't read the forums, so they didn't know that was going to happen. So I thought I'd better get a video out sooner rather than later. I've even had people message me about the new situation in terms of planet's production allocation. So I wanted to give my thoughts on that. As I mentioned earlier, I'm actually in favour of the wheels being removed from the game, possibly even a global wheel as well. But Stardock could have done better with what they replaced it with. I mentioned things like earlier on that they could reduce the micromanagement with that. They could even potentially increase the focus amount more so than 25%, so you'd have more control over your economy. Increasing it too much would result in nobody using the global wheel. Say for example it was increased to 100%, maybe even 75%, but 33%, 40%, 50%, that might be enough to give you more control, but not too much where you'd avoid using the global wheel. So there are things like that that they could do to make the system better. There are many areas where Stardock deserve criticism in my opinion. I kind of didn't want to criticize them in this video, but I guess I'll do it now rather than make an entirely separate video. So basically there are areas in the game like the economy system, the AI, diplomacy, micromanagement, user interface, tons of things that need work done on them that Stardock have been slow in my opinion to introduce changes to. For example, diplomacy is probably the worst diplomatic system I've ever played in any 4X game. I'm not over exaggerating that. I think it's utterly dreadful. They are going to be changing in the 1.5 patch, and I'm going to be posting my ideas on how they could improve it on their forums. I actually really recommend you check out the forums if you have an opinion on something that they should do or changes that they've made. I was going to mention in this video my opinion on why they made these changes, but I think it's better to divert you to a forum post made by the CEO. That's Brad Wardell Frogboy. It's a forum post called Reinventing the Wheel that details why they made these changes, and he's mentioned why they were going to make these changes previously a lot as well. I'll leave a link to that in the comments and in the video notes. There's other areas of the game like the AI. Supposedly that's had huge improvements, but you can see here I've out-colonized the AI. I don't believe the AI is going to be a threat to me in this game, so they still got work to do on that. User interface, they just need to add tooltips all over the place. They're just really bad at doing that, Stardock are, compared to other games like Europa Universalis 4. They're excellent at adding extra information to help out the player. For example, the designer screen, there's only 3 options here. The user interface is dreadful in this area. The game probably shouldn't have been released in this state. Basically, user is the only useful one. You're probably not going to use core or enhance too often. And there's no way to basically find the ship that you're looking for here. There's no alphabetical sorting. There's no sorting of any type whatsoever. You can't sort by cost or hull type. All of those things need to be added here, and I don't understand why they haven't added them to the game yet. It's almost as if they make the game, but they don't actually play the game. There's certain things that are just obvious, in my opinion, that they should have been added by this point. So I think Stardock really deserve criticism in a lot of areas. Kind of reluctant in doing it, but I kind of feel I have to. Basically, the reason why I haven't covered Galactic Civilizations 3 on the channel as much as I was planning on doing and I said I was going to is because of the issues with the game. Galactic Civilizations 3 videos that I've made are some of the most popular videos on the channel. It's a game series that I've been playing since Galciv 1, so I really like the game. But yeah, I haven't made content for it because of those issues, so I'm really hoping they get them fixed sooner rather than later. And hopefully we don't have to buy an expansion or two as well before certain issues are fixed as well. So I believe that covers just about all the criticism that I was going to deliver in this video, apart from one thing, and that's some of the proposals for future content or future changes. Just before I made this video, there's a forum post called Economies and Command Economics, or something along those lines, that was left on the forum pages made by, once again, Frogboy. So that mentions a new mechanic that's going to be introduced to the game called Coercion. I recommend you check out that forum post and form your own opinions on it, but my opinion is that it's going to be dreadful. It's basically going to be reduce specialization within the game, so you just have more homogenized planets still all making the same things. It's going to make the game really boring. From what I've read of it, I'm probably going to post on that page eventually, but I recommend you to check it out and make your own opinion on it. And if, well, share your opinion as well. If you don't like it, mention it. If you like it, mention it. So, yeah, that concludes this video, I believe. I think I've mentioned just about everything I wanted to mention. I do have a Patreon page. If you want to help me out, help support the channel, please give it a look. Even a small sort of donations will massively help me out, so I'm able to create content like this for years to come. If you're able to do that, I'm really, really grateful to you. But if you're not able to do that, just please keep on watching the videos anyway. If you like any of this content as well, if you haven't subscribed yet, please consider doing so. Right, that concludes everything. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.